there's so many moving parts to our economy and society that it's hard to say, oh yeah, I can pin down exactly what's happening. I see the causal chain and it's all like, no, actually things are so complicated that we sort of desperate for some simplistic story to try to make sense of things. And then those stories end up setting the agenda or the narrative, and they may or may not actually be accurate.
Welcome to Millennial Majority. Today, I'm joined again by Charles Hugh Smith, the author of The Mythology of Progress. And we're going to be discussing anti-progress in two forms that it comes in that I think is very notorious in our economy. The first one is reverse leverage. And a second one is one of my favorites, which is hot potato economics. Charles, could you lead us into your discussion on how anti-progress has manifested first in reverse leverage and tell us a little bit about what that is?
Okay, that's a great topic, Adam. So what I mean by reverse leverage is, normally when we talk about we're going to leverage something up, right? It means that we're going to take a small sum of money or a new skill or something, and we're going to turn it into something much larger. We're going to get a big return on that investment. So, for instance, we're going to spend $9 today and we're going to get $90 return because we leveraged up that capital or that skill or that opportunity. Reverse leverage is we scrimp and only spend $9 today to save $1, and it's going to cost us $90 to fix what's going to break in the future. So in other words, instead of generating a return that's tenfold, we're actually generating a future expense that's 10 times the what we saved. And so that's like reverse leverage. And there's a lot of examples of this. And in a previous program, I mentioned that one of my friends had a McMansion that was about 10 or 15 years old, and all the windows had rotted out because they were made with finger joint pine for the window frames, which is notoriously soft and absorbs water and it rots quickly. The builder probably saved about $3,000 on this big house in using the cheap windows with the pine window frames. And then my friend had to spend $30,000 to fix the rotted windows. So save $3,000, costs you $30,000. That's reverse leverage. And I think you have an example in your recent experience with your electrical system and electrical panel box.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Charles. And this topic came up because we've discussed, if you've seen any of our previous episodes, we've discussed how sometimes it feels like we're robbing the future with some of the things we do, where we know that if we spent 30, 40 more dollars, it would save us hundreds or thousands. And only does it make sense in worlds where you're not the one who's going to bear those consequences, which too often that's been the case, especially the way we've set up our economy. So we had some stuff with a fuse box in the house where we went and looked, and the guy looked at it and shook his head as soon as he took the panel off and went, I was doing building when they did this stuff. It was like 20, 30 more dollars to upgrade to the better one that was bulletproof and would last you decades. This one, I replace them all the time. But to that builder who was looking at short-term, quarter-to-quarter profits, and it was just about how much can I extract, why wouldn't they save $30 or $40? That's going to be the homeowner's problem, and it won't be their problem for a while. It'll last 10, 15 years. Why am I going to spend a little bit extra more money? And, it'll last 50, 60 years. That has nothing to do with me. So it feels like this reverse leverage is something that it irritates me a lot. And if I can go into a quick story, and Charles, you and I have talked about it before, but it's one I've wanted to say for a long time, and this is the perfect time. When I first started running my own business, I hired my employees, and I had been working, and I was still working my own job, and I'd worked a lot of minimum wage jobs. So I made sure when I hired my employees, I paid them well, and they had good jobs, and I tried not to micromanage, and I wanted to make sure I gave good health benefits. So I reached out to a company, and my accountant helped me, and I was like, oh, okay, this is great. There's tax credits, blah, blah, blah. And I came to the point where they were like, okay, do you want to add, dental and vision? And I'm like, yep, I do. I know a lot of companies don't offer these. Can you tell me about how much it is? And the lady on the phone stopped for a second. I can almost hear her wincing, like, sir, it's going to be like the basic vision is like $3 more an employee. And the dental and vision, I think dental was $3, vision was $6, or vice versa. It was very cheap. We were young at the time. But I stopped for a second. Hold on. Lots of companies don't offer these. I thought that was because they were expensive, or let's just say $150 for the medical benefits. I figured it would be 20 to 30% of that. What's another $50, $80 or something? And the lady was like, absolutely not. And I stopped there because she was a broker. I said, ma'am, I know I'm young, but can I ask this? I said, why in the hell do they not offer this if it's so cheap? And they go, because they can. And then she went into some stories that I don't want to go into, but she just told me about how companies, when they've got to cut something, it's very easy to cut and they can. And it was one of those moments. I think it was like a pulling back the curtain on a Wizard of Oz kind of thing where it really stuck with me the rest of my life that people could make such a small disinvestment, I guess, where they no longer gave you dental or vision to save $9 a month per employee, but it could cost those employees hundreds or thousands of dollars a month and just make their quality of life substantially worse. And the only reason you would do that is if it didn't impact you in any way and you were forced into thinking short term, which would be anti-progress in my opinion in some of its purest form. But go ahead, Charles. I've gone on quite a diatribe there.
No, no, I think that's an excellent example of what we're talking about and why anti-progress is so destructive for like the entire society and economy is the mindset there that you describe, and you described before we started recording it. You called it, I think, very appropriately, quarter to quarter capitalism. So it's not just maximizing profit, which can be done in a variety of ways. It's like maximizing profit by focusing solely on the short term and on using, and never mind about reverse leverage, and never mind about the effect on the people in your system, right? The customers and your employees. So when you think about this $9 a month in vision and dental, it's reverse leverage on steroids because, as you said, the employee will very likely, at least some employees, will say, well, I'm not going to go to the dentist because I have to pay cash. And if I'd had insurance, I would have gone. So they don't go to the dentist regularly. Then, of course, they start having dental problems, more cavities or tooth decay or gum disease, whatever. And then the cost is now, as you say, in the mega thousands to fix what could have been treated early, right? And for much less expense. And so this effect on the quality of life, as well as the pain and suffering of having all this dental work done, all of that could have been put aside with the $9 a month. But instead, it was like the mindset is it's if it doesn't fit on a spreadsheet, then it doesn't count, right? And so you don't put the well-being of your customers and employees on a spreadsheet. That doesn't count, right? What counts is the money. So this whole mentality that we called in previous programs, the kind of bean counter mentality, where we're going to quantify everything, except we're going to leave out everything that really matters, because that can't be quantified, right? Like nobody's quantifying reverse leverage. That's the problem. And that's anti-progress in its purest form. What really matters, it's not on the spreadsheet because it's hard to quantify. What's easy to quantify is money. And then that's what I'm incentivized to do because that's what I was hired to do, right? And we were speaking before we started recording about this. There's sort of an echo chamber here, this whole bean counter mentality that dominates corporate America, which is you go to school, you get an MBA at a top school, and you're trained to be a bean counter and to focus on the spreadsheet. And that's what you're hired by corporate America to do, is to save them money, do some reverse leverage, focus on next quarter. And so you have no knowledge of what actually matters, which is the quality of life of your employees and the quality of the goods and services you're providing to the customer, right? That's none of your purview at all. You're there to squeeze a little more profit out of whatever can be put on the spreadsheet. And then who do you hire as you advance up the ranks? Well, you hire other MBAs from your same alma mater, right? There's this, as you said, it's like an echo chamber mentality where no one's coming in and saying, hey, you guys are doing the most incredibly destructive anti-progress thing possible here. Why don't you wake the heck up? There's nobody to say that. And so this is how anti-progress just keeps grinding on, advancing and expanding, because it's a mindset that feeds on itself, because no one can question you if you say, well, hey, Never mind all that reverse leverage stuff. What matters is we made more profit this quarter. We won. And I'm being lauded by the executive, the executive floor because I squeezed a little more profit out. So there you go. Who gets incentivized to pursue that? What incentive is there to try to quantify all the meaningful stuff that's difficult to quantify? There's no incentive whatsoever.
The late great Charles